Thanks, Imran. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here again. So look, I met Tom about 4 years ago, and his video it was a Tom Cruise deepfake, and it was exploding across the internet. And I wanted to find out about the technology, like how is this possible that somebody can create something that looks so real, we can't distinguish between the real or the virtual. I wanted to know what was behind the technology. So I met Tom, and actually what was really surprising to me was how more interesting he was than the technology. He was such a smart thinker on AI. He had so many incredible plans and ambitions for what he was going to build. And now, 4 years on, he's really realized a hell of a lot of that. So I wanted to ask you, Tom, give us an update on what is Metaphysic, what do you do? And we're going to see some amazing clips of what he does, but I just wanted to hear from you first to set it up. What is it that you work on? What's your speciality?
Perfect. So at Metaphysic, what we do is kind of build the technology and software to scale photorealistic AI-generated content to everyone on Earth. But that's a pretty big thing. So today, and over the last 4 years, since those viral kind of deep fake Tom Cruise clips on TikTok, we've really focused on Hollywood and stuff in the music space, but the areas where people pay like a relatively large amount of money for content. And so replacing VFX, music production, music videos, things like that is where we've found a lot of application for creating photorealistic AI-generated humans and human performance in partnership with the actual artists themselves. So they're kind of using it as a tool to maybe change their performance, edit their performance, things like that.
That's amazing. We're going to watch a clip of it in a second of some of your work. But, for me, obviously, the writer's strike, which, brought Hollywood production globally to a standstill, was very important in challenging the fact that AI could be and will likely take away a lot of jobs. The actors, the extras, the writers that were involved in that strike were really saying, we're not going to be replaced by AI and we want our contracts to stipulate that. But you're talking about a very different kind of use of AI, right? You're talking about augmenting human performance with AI. So the most recent example of that is the de-aging of Tom Hanks and Robin Wright Penn for this movie Here, which is directed by Robert Zemeckis. So can you introduce the concept of how you worked with AI to augment their performance and explain what that means?
Yeah, absolutely. So for this movie Here, which is in cinemas now, Bob Zemeckis, he had this idea where he would play out time over a set space, and in this space, families, they grow and they grow old, and Tom Hanks and Robin Wright play one of the couples in this family. So we see them young, 20-year-old kids going all the way through to being kind of 90 years old where the film ends. And it's amazing to watch the performers there on set kind of trying to inhabit their younger selves or their older selves. But what we could do with AI, and what you'll see, is we could run it live real time. So we're doing kind of head and shoulder swaps where on the screen they're acting and they can see, like in the mirror, their younger selves. And that's actually quite a strange human experience, really. Generally, like, there's a lot of emotion that comes with that, and once they get used to it, it's incredibly good for like fine-tuning your performance. And it turns out you have to do different things with your face to try to kind of act like a 20-year-old if you happen to be 67. So that kind of live real-time element was really revolutionary in helping generate the performance. And that's something that's really new and cutting edge.
Shall we look at it?
Yes. So what we're going to see here from the movie Here, and you'll notice Tom Hanks and Robin Wright, younger versions of themselves. And so that's all AI generated on top of their performance. So if we roll the clip.
I'd like you to meet Margaret.
Nice to meet you, Margaret.
Nice to meet you, Mr. Young.
Time sure does fly, doesn't it?
Sure does.
Right here is where we want to be.
You know, if you like, you could spend the rest of the night here.
I could spend the rest of my life here.
It's getting a little panned by critics. The VFX are great. I thought it's a fantastic film, an amazing story. And it's based on a postmodern graphic novel by Richard Maguire, which is seminal, called Here. And so just visually, it's really something to behold.
It could have been done in VFX, right? Robert could have de-aged Tom Hanks using all kinds of other tools, but why was it important to use AI and real-time AI? You talked a bit about that in your introduction, but explain that a bit more, because it's really about capturing emotion in a way that is deeper and more authentic to the performance, right?
Actually, that kind of realism where it kind of blends into reality, we're kind of processing it like it's real, rather than kind of consuming the artifice of it being fake and just dealing with that, like in The Irishman or other de-aging and digital human things that we've seen. So you can't get there with traditional CGI 3D modelling VFX. And so this AI technology, when it comes to creating content, is a step function change in capability, but also dramatically more efficient. So what used to take hours and hours and hours to render per frame from 3D models, we are doing live real time, kind of from a laptop in some instances. And you can think about that GPU is generating 100 frames a second of what would take hours and hours per frame. And that's a good indication of kind of some of the cost and efficiency.
And were there any headaches along the way? What were some of the challenges?
Yeah, so you move into a different paradigm with AI, and certainly something we'll talk about later in terms of the importance of your data and collecting that today. You go from creating a 3D model of something, where you're kind of doing that from an artist's perspective, getting it right, and then you manipulate it, to you're collecting a data set and you're training an AI model with that data set. But it is a shit in, shit out kind of problem. If you don't have the data, if you don't have a good scan or good data from Tom Hanks from 1980, which obviously we didn't, we had limited data, it's very difficult to make that AI model accurately represent this thing called, what we're going for is like perfect likeness, which is, you can get to 96...
So did Tom Hanks give you personal archive as well of himself?
Yes, I believe
for your data?
There is some licensed material from previous movies. There's like Big and Splash Brothers. And then I think there were some home videos. But even most people today, they just don't have a huge collection. And so if you go all the way back to 1980, there's not much.
And what was their reaction like when they first saw the younger version of themselves?
This is really interesting. So when you're presented with your younger self, it's very confusing. And then you realise that it's doing the thing that you're doing. It's like a mirror. And so most of the time people at some point cry in that first session. Nearly universally, people start giving their younger selves advice. They start talking to them. It's thousands of hours of therapy built into a small thing. Though at my wedding a year ago, we had my wife and I a deepfake station, and all of the guests could come up and have our faces on them.
Imran,
and so
next year, BOF, deepfake station.
I've got hours of this footage still to walk through and see what people do.
That's funny. Eminem is another artist that you worked with, where you again were creating his likeness, where you de-aged him for a music video for for Houdini, his latest music video. Can we see a clip of that? Or actually, why don't you set it up and then we'll watch a clip of it.
So for his latest album, the kind of single from that, Houdini, the music video is kind of a battle between Slim Shady from 20 years ago and Eminem today. And they morph together in the end to create a hybrid, a new monster. And that process is really difficult because de-aging anybody with their performance is quite an effort when it comes to the data and the manipulation of the model. But the magic is really in Marshall's performance. No one else can be Slim Shady. And when he sits in that seat and he's being Slim Shady, it is incredible. And you couldn't recreate that with AI. And so we're talking about changing the visual elements, using that as a tool. The idea of generating that performance of Slim Shady from scratch with AI, we're many years away from that today.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's have a look at the clip.
We've got a problem. Check this out.
The fuck?
The fuck is this shit? reach in my back, bruh. Like abracadabra. Poof, just like that, and I'm back, bruh. Break it down. Sometimes I wonder what the old me say. If he could see the way shit is today, he'd probably say that everything is gay. What's my name? What's my name?
Fantastic. I left a jump cut. And so that's obviously really fun. A little bit of a follow-up to this one, the next clip that we'll see, also from Eminem, at the VMA Awards. So that won the VMA for the music video for the work that we did. And then at the actual ceremony, he did the opening performance, and we did a live real-time version of Slim Shady on stage next to him, kind of like the Tupac hologram in a sense, which was also done by members of the Metaphysic team about 12 years ago now. And so you'll see young version on stage with Marshall. The interesting thing about this is it's the first time that kind of generative AI has been used in a live broadcast. So it's not just the camera capturing the young performer with the face on top, going through the machine, putting the face on top. It's also going out through the broadcast system and live national television, which is quite a technical feat. We're talking about things which used to take hours and days to render, now moving into this live real-time paradigm.
Okay, we'll have a look at it and we'll talk a little bit more about it.
Perfect.
Okay.
Sometimes I wonder what the old me say. If he could see the way shit is today, he'd probably say that everything is gay. Like happy. What's my name? What's my name? Slim Shady.
It's uncanny.
Yeah,
So it's projection mapped onto a young performer, right?
yes. So
Deconstruct it for us.
Yes, absolutely. So in this case of the live real-time version, we're using a performer who has kind of a right height. We went through a bunch, and some were good facial match, but too tall. And so there you see the likeness is not as great coming through as Marshall on top of Marshall, but it's still very, very good. And so the camera is going to capture the footage. We're going to use the GPU to do a facial recognition on the stand-in, and then map the AI version of Slim Shady's face on top, and then it just goes straight back out to the production system.
Fantastic. Any hiccups along the way?
Yes, I think that the hardest thing,
I mean, what's the potentiality for fuck-ups with this kind of technology?
Everybody knows here, there's like the movie industry and there's the music industry. Anything in the music industry, the potential for fuck-ups is tremendous. So that's a movable feast of reacting quickly to changing circumstance.
Yeah.
But the technology is actually very, very robust, and our production systems are robust, which is a lot of development work. And so that lets you do that adaptation. And that's where you can get those kind of results where it's very, very difficult to bring all of that together and sometimes build the software. You guys saw maybe all of the Slim Shady doubles in the background. We had to quickly build software to not recognise all of those faces because it was overloading the GPU with trying to recognise 50 faces. So things like that.
And how is it working with Eminem, with Marshall? How into it did he get?
Very, very into it. If there's someone who is the most hardworking, down-to-earth, conscientious artist that I have seen, it's Marshall. Just really working on his craft, perfecting the lyrics, the song, the performance, everything. Amazing.
Did it make him cry when he saw his younger self for the first time?
No, I think he was. I think that he was in character as Slim Shady at the time, and he's there in that moment. So yeah, he's robust to anything.
Bulletproof. Yeah. How fast do you think AI is moving, and what does that mean for the creative industries?
Yeah, it is moving very, very fast. When we started Metaphysic, we thought it would take 10 years to do X. It took 1/10 that time. I think that's a reasonable discount. Any idea that anybody here has about how fast something will be, it'll be 10 times faster. So I think that it's reasonable to say that we'll be making entire movies with AI, background, foreground, everything like that, still using actors and performers, still directors and artists, curating and choosing what they want. that all the visuals will be AI probably within a couple of years. And that then flows to all pixels, all content that people look at on screens. So whether anybody likes it or not, we're going to replace the camera with a new format of generating imagery. It will give people more creative control and freedom. But we have to, as people, as an industry, as society, find ways to safeguard humans' likeness, our rights, our performance, and privilege, human performance, which is always today infinitely better than anything AI generated. But those lines are beginning to become blurred.
Robert Zenik said something really interesting where he kind of made an analogy to the music industry. And he said that, when technology came along to be able to mimic any instrument, the sound of any instrument, it didn't mean that composers or musicians went out of work, right? It just new genres got invented, and he cites techno as a new genre. And he believes that AI for film will be like techno was for music. Do you agree with that point of view?
Yeah, I think so. I think that we will have a proliferation of better quality content that is more relevant to smaller audiences. So more of us will be able to create Hollywood quality content. And that will flow all the way down to, I think, we will take our memories and our kids' first birthday parties and graduations, and we'll be able to take the data from the real world and move it through systems that generates like a movie immersive experience, like a Star Trek holodeck experience of that for audiences of one, for small units, for families. That's the kind of promise of the computational speed and efficiency, where we can be doing this on our mobile phones in a few years, that this kind of technology delivers. So much more personalized content, new ways to engage audiences, to bring audiences and their data and their likeness into content. It's going to happen very, very quickly.
But the blurred lines you were talking about earlier is really around copyright, right, and ownership and privacy. And I think that there's so many music artists at the moment and all kinds of artists at the moment that are concerned about their own data being scraped by large language models. So I think brands working with OpenAI systems, with systems that are basically scraping the internet and other people's intellectual property to put out something that is really just a sort of mashup or a mimic of things that already exist, that will probably only get worse, right? There's only going to be more of that over time. So what are the watch outs for you between well-crafted content that's ethical and stuff that's just churned out by technology? How do we know how to navigate that as brands and as creators?
I think that beyond the technology, we all have to focus on the idea that no one should be creating a realistic version of someone's likeness, their voice, their performance, without that person's direct informed consent. And continuous consent. I used to be a lawyer focused on human rights and technology. It seems fundamental, it seems so obvious, but it is not necessarily the stance of many tech companies who are just doing the research, pushing the limits, trying to do new things. And so it's the job of people who are commissioning content and making content to really take care for how likeness is created, which rights, whose rights are impacted there, and also the data, as you alluded to, that goes into training those models. Do you have the right to use that data to train the model that is then generating the AI output? So for instance, today in big studio movies, we can't use lots of stable diffusion outputs because those big foundational models are trained on data that is scraped from all over the internet without permission. All of these models you see here are trained from data only with permission, so that's kind of permissible, that makes sense. So those new kind of frontiers are things that we have to be responsible for because we are the front line of deciding.
Tom, sorry to interrupt you because we're running out of time and we could talk about this for a much, much longer period of time, but we have one more clip to show, which I think is really, really fascinating. So it's another incredible use of real-time AI by you, and it was at a TED Talk for this incredible Chinese artist called Saigua Cheng. Can you introduce it quickly?
Absolutely. So you're going to see live real-time voice translation. Saigua Cheng, the artist, he only speaks Chinese. We trained a model on him speaking Chinese, but we got it to come out so that it's live translating him speaking English. So let's have a look.
Tai is incredible. Tai's language is Mandarin. Many of us do not speak Mandarin. But Tai agreed to do a wild experiment. For this talk, we collaborated with another TED speaker, Tom Graham, and his team at Metaphysic, who built an AI model to make Ty's translator's voice sound just like Ty, speaking just like he is speaking in English. So Sung is in our sound booth now. Sung, hello.
Hi, everyone.
Okay, so it's great to see you. Now, let's hear you sounding as if you were Ty.
My name is Ty
My
Guoqiang.
name is Tai Guoqiang.
Okay, nothing's going to go wrong here. Nothing's going to go wrong. The stage is yours.
Thank you. More than 1,000 years ago, when Chinese alchemists were developing elixir of immortality, one recipe caused an explosion. Boom. Deng. They named their discovery fire medicine, the Chinese word for gunpowder.
Wow. But there's no language data set for him that is him speaking English. So how did you create that?
That was really surprising. So it's only trained on him speaking Chinese, but it comes out as you would imagine him speaking English, but there's no reference material. And his wife afterwards is like, this is amazing. My husband couldn't speak English and now he can speak. But you notice that we're not doing the brains of it. That's his translator translating in real time. Yeah. So it's going from that kind of 25-year-old woman's voice in English into his voice. But the thing there is live real time. So it's happening with like a 300 millisecond delay. And the audience, it's weird for a few seconds and then they just melt into it. It's just the kind of a medium is not important. The message is privileged. That's the power of this kind of stuff that looks and sounds like the real world. We process it like reality.
Thank you so much, Tom. It's fascinating and it's been a real pleasure to have you here at BOF Voices and have you share your work with us.
Thanks for having me.